I was in a meeting the other day. We had a new colleague and we went around the table introducing ourselves. On the way out, this new colleague asked me where I was from. I said I was born and raised in Poland, but spent a lot of time in France growing up. Then I did my undergrad in the Netherlands, and I've been in England for roughly 5 years. He put his hands in his pockets, leaned slightly back on his heels and said, "Okay." And then he left. After about a week at the office, this new colleague went on holiday. When he came back from touring Northern America, he said that when we first met, he was really excited to tell me about his trip. He said, "I thought you were Canadian and that you'd be thrilled to hear I was going. And then he said you weren't Canadian, so he didn't tell you. I didn't think you'd be excited." "Hold on," I said. "What does being Canadian have to do with being excited?" Of course I would have been excited. In fact, I prefer it when people go places other than my native country. Whenever anyone goes to Poland, they go places I've never been. I feel silly. This wasn't the first time this happened. When people meet me, they often tell me about their Canadian trip or ask me about my Canadian parent or how long I'd lived in Canada. When I tell them where I'm from and that I have no connection to Northern America, they take a moment and then they say, "Well, that's fine, but you're not really that Polish anyway." I was born and raised in a strictly uniform environment. There was one language, one color, one religion. I traveled from an early age, so I knew that there were places in the world where people looked and lived differently, but I still remember the first time I saw a black person in my hometown. He was a young man, and he was on the bus I took home from school. I was 18 and I stared at him. And then I thought, okay, cool. I moved away at 21. I spent my adult life away from where I grew up, and I built a career using a language that my parents don't speak. The people I love currently reside in over 20 countries, and whenever anyone asks, "Where's home?" I don't really know what to say. My grandmother died last year. I was getting the keys to open the door and the streetlight had gone out a couple of days before, so I needed my phone to see the lock. It was raining and I took my phone out to shine it on the lock and I saw the message through the droplets broken against my screen as I tried to wipe it with my thumb. My grandmother died. Inside, my housemates were having a party. There was music, smoke, laughter. I went to my room and made arrangements. In her lifetime, my grandmother lived in 3 different countries without ever moving away. When I moved abroad, she always asked, "When will you come home? This is your country. We fought for this country. Why don't you live here? There, all these people, they're not like you, you're not like them. Here, you're one of us. One of our own." My dad tried to explain to her that things were different from my generation. He said that, though he himself couldn't get a passport for over half his life, I grew up to be a citizen of the world, a multilingual, a cosmopolitan, a person free to move, who feels at home anywhere. For a while I agreed, but the more places I'd lived and the more people I'd met, the less it rang true. The last time I saw my grandmother, I decided that next time I'd visit her alone. We'd talk about country and what it means to be from somewhere. I'd ask her, why was she so attached to a country that she'd known under 3 different names? A country that didn't even exist 7 years before she was born and didn't become itself for another 60 plus. A country that not only didn't do anything for her, but took from her everything it could. We never had that conversation. I arrived at the funeral. Now, most of my family don't speak to each other, so waiting for the service was really strange. Afterwards, I walked behind the coffin, but after the burial, my immediate family didn't invite me to receive condolences, and my extended family didn't know who I was. On the flight back, I flicked through Polish papers. I read about Polish leadership refusing Syrian refugees. I read about initiatives to protect Polish values. Values rooted in a form of Catholicism that goes against the teachings of Pope Francis, and values that were under threat from migrants and refugees and people who thought that migrants and refugees were as good as local citizens. I wondered what my grandmother would have said. This wasn't what being Polish was about. At the same time, I couldn't help but wonder, did we get here because everyone open to diversity moved away? Either way, I was relieved. I lived abroad, away from this reality. I got back to England exhausted. The streetlight was still out and my housemates were having another party. I went to bed with a pillow pressed against my ears, and at 5 a.m. I asked them to just please keep it down. They told me to move out. Back at the office, I browsed the news. They wrote about me. The Eastern European migrant forcing the English working class out of jobs, benefits, houses. I was working a professional job, paid taxes, had never made a benefits claim, and I too couldn't find stable and affordable housing. I was living the problem I was allegedly creating, and apparently the solution was for me to get out. I didn't know where to go, but time was running out on my address, and I needed to ask friends for refuge. Some evenings, my friends came home early enough for us to sit in the kitchen and talk. We talked about our day. We laughed about distracted bosses and projects without managers and colleagues whose tea habits gave rhythm to our day. We shared our dreams. It turned out that all we ever wanted from life was to grow trees or have a pet for just enough time for a long shower. We told each other about the cities we were from and the cities we had lived in, and we wished for a place where we and all our friends and loved ones and their friends and loved ones could live safely and happily in one neighborhood. I remember at some point I looked up and realized that we were 5 people with 7 passports. We spoke 8 languages and worked in 4 industries. The colors of our skin were different, and so our accents and our beliefs. Our attitudes differed on money, politics, religion. In fact, there was barely a thing we agreed on. And yet, there we were, in a kitchen filled with steam rising from a pot of pasta, just talking. I rarely felt more at home. I eventually found a place and moved, but it wasn't quite settled. I had questions I couldn't let go. I asked my friends around the world, where's home when the country you were born to, you can never return to? Where's home when you've lived in 9 different countries before turning 21? What's your first language after growing up speaking 5? Can you ever feel loved by someone who speaks only 1? Who are you if the language you speak is about to become extinct? Over time, I expanded my definition of a friend. I asked everyone around me, where is home? People put down their phones and told me what's most important. I suddenly felt protected. My grandfather on my mother's side told me a story of when he and his family were forced out of their home. It was 1940 and my grandfather was only 10. One night, a truck pulled up and Nazi officers put all of my family's possessions onto a platform trailer. Then another truck pulled up and someone else moved into their house. During the war, my family lived as laborers on an estate. Being Polish was outlawed. When the war ended, they packed up all their stuff and went back to the same house. It was like a portable home, my grandfather said. When I move, it's by choice. I leave most of my possessions behind, and whenever I close the door, I know I will never come back to the same address. Wherever I arrive, people tend to embrace me. After all, don't we all love Canadians? I was born and raised in Poland, but spent a lot of time in France growing up. I did my undergrad in the Netherlands, and I lived in England for over 5 years. Now, whenever anyone asks, "Where's home?" I say it's right here, between us. What follows is a written record of conversations with people around me. Friends, teachers, colleagues, housemates, neighbours. People who put down their phone and told me what's most important. My home is in these conversations, and it's a wonderfully portable home.